Bom dia, Portugal!
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, Gumpers.
Hola, bon dia, alegria. Munson here with a Good Morning Portugal show, live stream and podcast. Forgive me just a moment. I was watching somebody who was demanding that their son be treated by a vet because he identifies as a cat. Now, don't forget, folks, these things are created to test your intelligence and your availability to being triggered, I think. Well, that'll teach me for looking at Twitter. Now known as X. How are you this morning? Two heads are better than one. I'm giving the game away straight away here. The latest of the Portuguese sayings from Antonio F. over at the Portugal Club. He posted that up late last night, one of hundreds now. And just think, if two heads are better than one, duas cabeças pensam melhor do que uma, better than one are two heads. Imagine how intelligent and almighty and awesome and incredible this community is. We've got many heads here. We've got quite a few older heads. Combined IQ must be of interest, I would have thought, to NASA and other leading bodies of world and human development. Just think about that for a moment, but don't think about it for too long. We need to move on and see who's here this morning. We've got the doc joining us at 9. We'll have Jacqui Paolo joining us before that from Expats Portugal to tell us about forthcoming attractions over at Expats. And I recorded a lovely interview with her yesterday. We're making a series of short videos that focus on little cameos of life as an American here in Portugal and some amazing things. I've talked to Jacqui quite a lot, obviously, but found out some lovely things about her life here in Portugal yesterday and the affection she feels for the country. So that was great. Looking forward to seeing her in about 15 minutes or so. The doc at about 9. And Bobby not joining us. He's on site. And the most recent picture from Bobby, this is what the office looks like for Bobby. Well, actually, I can't find it now, but it's somebody pouring concrete. That's how. Here's a picture of us on the beach at Arroera. I hope you've seen our promotional teaser now for the Englishman and the Irishman walking into a bar. At the moment, I can't bring you the picture of concrete being poured into a building site, although I suspect you know what that looks like. That's his world at the moment. That's his office, if you like, there at the office with Bobby O'Reilly there. So, yeah, nice and busy over at Haddad de Mayo. And I can see men in hard hats here. I don't know why you can't. But I shall save that and bring it to you a little bit later on. So sadly, Bobby not able to join us. A bit busy this morning, but he'll be back along presently, sometime soon, I'm sure. And Paolo Fornassi, the Italian stallion, everybody, is joining us later on in the show. He was scheduled to be with us for around 9:30, but he might be a little bit late this morning. Portugal, Italy, we're kind of flexible with our timekeeping, aren't we? I think he's got he also has a work demand this morning, which might make him a little bit late. But Paolo Fornassi is the gentleman. If we go over to our website, goodmorningportugal.com, let me just share that with you now. And we'll get into a few greetings in just a moment. Bear with me just a moment. I just want to tell you about our guest who's joining us this morning, Paolo Fornassi. Does that ring any bells for anybody? He's the fellow behind the massive Facebook group of foreigners down there. It was originally focused on Albufeira. Now it has extended to all of the Algarve. And he'll be telling us about why that's so popular among people and what his hopes and dreams are for the work that he's doing with foreigners in Albufeira and beyond in the Algarve. And I wrote specifically an article about him because we had him on the Portugal Club as one of our Tuesday night guests not so long ago. And these are all my Portugal resident articles. There's quite a few now. I think there's probably 30 or so that they add up, don't they? And don't forget, if you want a 20% off Portugal resident subscription, if you want that delivered to your home, we can get you 20% off as somebody who's part of the Gumper community as well. Yeah, there's the most recent one. Driven Mad in Portugal. That's me and Colin talking about the Toyota RAV4 there and our little day trip out. Not to Paris, but to Leiria. There's me having a snooze and urging other people to just do one thing a day and then having a little kip in the afternoon. Not that I've done that for a little while. I have to say, very busy at the moment. Portugal, the future and how to get there. How about that? I have a similar tone to this week's article. A little bit more gloomy and doomy, I have to say, but not without solutions and suggestions, of course. Don't like to leave people hanging there. And here's Paolo, who's joining us at around 9:30. And it's his cricket field of dreams. He wants to build a cricket field for a lot of the Asian lads down there in the Algarve who are stuck for something to do on their one day off a week. And he's thinking if they build a cricket pitch down there, that'll be an amazing asset and contribution to the local community. And those lads will have something to do and a bit of play cricket and have a bit of fun on their day off. So I think that's a great idea. And we'll talk to Paolo Funasi a little bit more about that. And I think he leans in a similar direction to the doc, who I no doubt will be talking about the Portuguese upcoming election. I've realised it's only, 2 weeks away? 10th of March. Let's see which day of the week that is. So we've got the Portuguese general election coming up on the 10th of March. That's a Sunday. Oh, yeah, of course. They don't mind having an election at the weekend here, do they? So the 10th of March is a Sunday. And, excuse me, not sure what that was. 10th of March, Sunday the 10th of March, that's when Portugal will decide on its political future, certainly in terms of the political parties. So I'm sure that will come up in the conversation with the doc, who lives in Leiria, was a GP back in the day in the UK. So any questions about health, well-being, that sort of thing, or life here in Portugal? It's Ask Anything About Portugal Wednesday. That's our tradition here. And I notice there's a lot of regulars. I mean, that's what we do, isn't it? On a morning, it's quite a lot of people who are quite well established here in Portugal. That doesn't mean to say you don't get the occasional things that make you go here. I think that lasts for the rest of your expat foreigner life here in Portugal. So if you do have a question, ask it here. If you have something to share, a reflection on Portugal and life herein, share that as well, because most of our viewers are in the United States, I would say, or certainly around the rest of the world, who are watching this on catch up and hearing about, yes, you are being reviewed most afternoons and evenings. Anything you say on the screen tends to get consumed and reviewed around the rest of the world for the rest of the day and eternity, for that matter, as well. God's also looking at what you're putting into the chat as well. So be very careful. Would be great, says Steve. Good morning to you, Steve. Good to talk to you yesterday. Would be great to see how the government will promote central Portugal investment. I see what you did there. Very good. And we'll be having Steve join us on a more regular basis to talk about his plans for central Portugal, which I absolutely chime with. I think it's wonderful that his attention and him and the likes of Paul Rees, others who are moving away from the traditional hotspots of investment here in Portugal into central, where there are still some amazing potential, amazing bargains, and not only that, but an amazing lifestyle to be enjoyed in central Portugal. The likes of which Pete Bleach, who's here this morning, Solar Pete, is here. He can tell you all about that. So let's say a few hellos. Good to see you, Steve. Good. Let's say a few hellos this morning at 7:46 this morning. Bom dia, Gumpers. Feliz a todos. Como tem passado? And a mindful moment. Let's start the show with a mindful moment from James. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift, which is why we call it the present. Who did say that? Who would say that sort of thing? That's an anonymous mindful moment there. Thank you very much for that, James. Mindful dad joke then. From the sublime to the ridiculous, I think there's 4 important things in life: compassion for self and others, recognizing that others have difficulties in life just like you, and to treat them as you treat yourself. That's not a mindful dad joke, is it? That's not funny. That's a mindful moment. Oh, I see. There are only 3 things there, right? Compassion for self and others, recognizing that others have difficulties in life just like you, and to treat them as you treat yourself. Or have we not finished? Are we accepting things? Oh, okay. All right, let me do that. Oh, I've completely messed that up, haven't I? Compassion for self and others, C, recognizing that others have difficulties in life just like you are recognizing, and to treat them as you treat yourself. A, for accepting things to be as they are in this present moment. And P, peace of mind is the highest happiness. Or just remember the acronym CRAP for short. Thank you very much. Sorry, James. I imagine you're slapping your own forehead this morning thinking, what could Munson have messed up any more than he did? Thank you, James. Coach Turner, then, bon dia Gumpers. The problem with looking after young children is that they are germ factories. Oh, another cold has arrived. You're blaming the kids, aren't you? Now, this would be Pasteur's germ theory. Who's the other one? Not Bechamel. That's a white sauce from Italy, isn't it? Beauchamp. There's a terrain theory as well. It might not be the kids. It might be you. Another cold has arrived. Still a quiet day ahead. So hopefully I can shake it off, shake it off. God's good tip of the day then from Coach. Finding the right balance between exercise and rest. We're talking about balance this week, aren't we? And I was hoping, I'm going to tag it on anyway, because I've got a bit of nutritional input from American News TV, right? You're going to love this. You're going to love this. We've been talking about intermittent fasting, not having breakfast, types of food for nutrition. You're going to love what I'm going to play you in just a moment. So Coach Turner then this morning, finding the right balance between exercise and rest is something that top athletes struggle with. However, they train at least 6 days a week. So it's not such an issue for us. Speak for yourself, Coach. I try to be active for at least 30 minutes each day, but only train twice a week. That for me seems to work without being too draining, though everyone will be different. Try mixing it up like Grandmaster Flash until you find a routine that works for you. Then build it into your regular schedule so it becomes a habit. Superb. And Pete agrees, as a teacher, former teacher, we used to fondly refer to the kids as the harbingers of death in education. Isn't that lovely? Sending your kids off to school, knowing that teachers are having conversations like that in the staff room. Well, I suppose we better go and teach the harbingers of death are waiting for us. Bon dia Gumpers from Jacqui the Humble Crafter. How are you doing? And James too. You're all germ theorists. And I have referred to schools as germ factories most of my adult life. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not a good idea, is it, to put loads of people of a similar demographic in one place? That's not natural. But then school isn't, is it? School is a feature of the Industrial Revolution, I believe. Bon dia, Jacqui. Industrial Revolution, Doc. There's a political smell in the air, isn't there? Heralding the arrival of the Doc. How are you this beautiful sunny morning? Oh, excess deaths. You know, I always ask Doc about excess deaths. I don't need to do that anymore. For example, in the UK, the ONS have changed the way that the stats are done. So there's nothing to worry about anymore, everybody. How are you this beautiful sunny morning? Azure blue skies and not a cloud in sight. From Pete to you, Jacqui. And James, the majority of male teachers die within a year of retirement in the UK. Well, it's a cheerful old show this morning, isn't it? All those diseases bubbling away in the background kick in when they relax. That's a weird one, isn't it? So I would challenge that. So you're the germ theorist there, then, Pete, in you would say that what you've got, you're in school and you're surrounded by germs that kill old people but not young people, and then as soon as you turn your back or retire, they get you. I mean, there must be other factors in there. Isn't it because they miss the children and having a sense of purpose in life? Couldn't it be something like that? I wonder. But that is fascinating. That's absolutely fascinating, Pete. And we might ask, I'm going to star that up and ask the doc what his theory. But that is shocking, isn't it? The majority of male teachers dying within a year of retirement in the UK. Or is that a government conspiracy just to keep them teaching because they can't employ any new ones? I don't know. Jacqui's just about to join us. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play that video that I've just mentioned. American News, then. This is for you if you have any concerns about whether to skip breakfast or not, or indeed whether to move breakfast to the other end of the day. I think you're going to find this interesting. This is a wonderful little bit of American News footage.
The cereal category has always been quite affordable, and it tends to be a great destination when consumers are under pressure. So some of the things that we're doing is first messaging. We got to reach the consumer where they are. So we're advertising about cereal for dinner. If you think about the cost of cereal for a family versus what they might otherwise do, that's going to be much more affordable.
I'm all for innovation and marketing, but the idea of having cereal for dinner, is there the potential for that to land the wrong way?
We don't think so. In fact, it's landing really well right now, Carl. When we look at all of our data, of course, we would know that breakfast cereal is the #1 choice for in-home consumption. We understand that for breakfast. It turns out that over 25% of our consumption is outside the breakfast occasion. A lot of it's at dinner, and that occasion continues to grow, as well as the snacking occasion. But cereal for dinner is something that is probably more on trend now, and we would expect to continue as that consumer is under pressure.
What did he just say? Let's give her a nice big round of applause and bring her onto the screen. Follow that, Jacqui. Cereal for dinner. Did you catch that?
Actually, I did. Could you hear me? Because I was just telling my husband not to give me an apple. You know, I hope you didn't hear that.
Morning, by the way. Hola, bon dia. Tudo bem?
Bon dia. You know, my concern with something like that is the amount of sugar in most processed foods.
Yeah.
So, you know, if one of my favorite desserts is actually an American cereal called Captain Crunch.
Yeah, how lovely. Your favorite cereals, everybody. Please put them in the chat. I've never tried Captain Crunch, but I want to just because of its name.
Well, I'll tell you, there's more sugar in it than there is in sugar. It has...
Excellent. There's more sugar in Captain Crunch than there is in sugar. Fantastic. Okay.
But it is a great, oh gosh, it's like the happiest childhood memory. But I would not, if you just look at the sugar content for most cereals, it's quite high.
Kellogg's.
You don't need to, yeah, and you don't need to, and it's so processed that one of the problems with overly processed foods, right, is that your body doesn't have to do any work. It's like 3/4 eaten for you before you put it in your mouth.
The robots did it for you, didn't they? In the production line, it all got digested into nice little shapes covered in sugar, so that your body can just enjoy them. In this part of your body, just in the mouth and the throat, maybe, and then to hell with the rest of the body that has to deal with that. Ricicles, says the Squire of the Shires. Oh, ready, Breck, says Owen. I do, yeah, and I've just been eating a little bit of porridge just recently as well. Cereal or crickets? Pick one. Morning, Sarah. Cereal for dinner? Crepes, says Sarah about that. Special K is the best, but Cocoa Pops chocolate cakes are simply proper, really lush. Now, she has the dietary regime of champions, we're finding out. She likes an HP sauce sandwich, followed later on in the day by Cocoa Pops chocolate cakes. Nice one, Jacqui. And Cocoa Puffs for James as well. Hot oatmeal. That sounds a little bit more healthy, doesn't it? Grains are also considered cereals, and fresh produce is still a relatively inexpensive food. Yeah, but it's so much hassle, isn't it? Going to the market and buying vegetables when you can just buy a dinner in a box now. So there you go. There's Kellogg recommending that you have cereal for dinner, everybody. How about that? And I know you didn't come to talk about that, Jacqui, but isn't that amazing?
I think it's also a little bit sad if you think about it, because it's not a healthy option.
No.
I mean, I think oatmeal, like one of the comments said, if you have to do cereal, you might as well do a slow cooked oatmeal. It's less expensive. Your body has to work to digest it.
Yeah.
And you control the sugar.
Yeah. And it feels like cooking.
That's the worst part. That's absolutely the worst part.
You see, when you make porridge like I do, it's an opportunity to get the whisk out. If you whisk the oats into the boiling water with a pinch of salt, it really feels like you're doing something. I feel like I should have a white hat on when I'm doing that. So I would recommend that. And there's lots of things you can add to it. I like a bit of cold milk on my hot porridge. Plant milk you can substitute. You can put a blob of jam in there if you've got a sweet tooth. It's a great breakfast oatmeal porridge. So thank you, Kellogg's, for that suggestion. And remember where you heard it first, everybody. If you turn up for dinner at somebody's house, you may well be getting Captain Crunch for old time's sake. And I don't know, what would you pair with that from the wine aisle in the supermarket, Jacqui?
I just put milk in it, and it has to be full fat milk.
Oh, yes. What is the point of any other milk other than, come on, because that was another con that we fell for, wasn't it? Along with margarine. Take all the fat out of milk and turn it into a thin white liquid because it's good for you. Well,
it's like putting cream in your Captain Crunch. It's just so delicious.
Yeah, it should almost stand on the top, shouldn't it, of a very thick milk there. So you haven't got a wine pairing for us. I'm thinking some spumant, something, a really nice contrast to the what might be seen as, like a little reference to the days when we never got out of our pajamas and watched TV all day and ate Captain Crunch, and then contrast that with a nice, expensive fizz for a dinner party. I think that would go down pretty well.
Oh, I think I'm already planning it. You just can't find Captain Crunch even in the American store in Lisbon because I've tried.
Really? Well, we'll see what we can do about that. I'm hoping that somebody will pick up on that and will send us a message to say that I heard Jacqui on the show. I am bringing Captain Crunch from the United States next time I fly in. If she meets me at the airport, I can, and we want a photo of that, somebody reuniting
Okay,
you.
if we're going to request something, no crunch berries because there's Captain Crunch and there's Captain Crunch with crunch berries.
Oh, that
I'm
sounds
a,
disgusting.
no,
That
no
again.
crunch berries.
No, fair enough. I mean, that is just spoiling something. I mean, that's like I don't know, a politically correct
Gilding the
hero.
lily. Gilding
Health,
the lily.
it's health and safety gone mad. Putting crunch berries in Captain Crunch. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. Okay. Bom dia, Portugal from João de Norte this morning. And Kellogg marketed the most important meal of the day. Now they're moving it. I'm not sure I trust marketing for my recommendations. What? I thought that's where we should take all our advice from these days, is from the marketing departments of the great corporations around the world. Anyway, we've given Kellogg's a big enough advert this morning, I think. Oh, one more. I was taught breakfast like a king, dinner like a prince, tea like a pauper, but I prefer the Simouette. What's that? With a 5-year-old sort of diet. Where's the chocolate? Yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay, so thanks, Kellogg's, for that suggestion, which many of us, if we're not doing it already, that is, will probably not be taking. Wow. Jacqui, how are you today? What's coming up? We got the Dream Team on Thursday night, which I think gets better and better. It was great fun, and I do like the little cultural question at the end. They're an amazing bunch of people, aren't they? Who you can call on for absolutely nothing on a Thursday night to find out how to move to Portugal.
And there are so many questions. I mean, it's really a rich resource because there's everybody is coming from a different perspective when they're moving here, whether it's a different state, a different type of visa they're looking for. It's so many moving parts to coming here. And I think if you're a premium member, you're pretty lucky to be able to ask these questions a lawyer, um, um, an
Daniel
accountant.
Reyes, yeah. Well, he
Yeah,
gives us some great insight on the politics as well. He's a constitutional, a fan of the Constitution. I think that was part of his department or choice of or branch of study when he was learning about law. So he's always fascinating to talk to, and a sailor as well.
well, one of the great things about them is that they are studying trends in the government
Mm,
and the psychology in the government, and so they're usually able to predict pretty accurately what they think the government's next move will be, especially in terms of the expat issues.
yeah.
And there are many, and the politics around that.
Yes.
And that's really helpful in deciding when and how to come to this country.
Yeah, yeah. I think we'll hear more from the doc about what may happen, what's likely to happen in the Portuguese politics with the upcoming election. But more stagnation, centrist stagnation, I think, is in the pipework.
Yeah.
Nothing too concerning, I think, from the point of view of Daniel Reyes and the great queen of the visas, Gilda, of course. I think Gilda is becoming more and more of a character and a personality. And she's hilarious. Not only is she an absolute genius when it comes to the knowledge of moving to Portugal, but she's hilarious as a personality as well. And we'll get the bombshell quip from her from time to time. She certainly knows how to put me in my place, and anyone else who dares to take her on in that environment. What's the 7:30 webinar tomorrow
That's
evening?
Holborn, and again,
Open
like
assets, wealth management, right?
it's wealth management, and that really does deal because, again, if your money, I know from my own experience, is coming from the US to Portugal, and you have different income streams, you really do need somebody to help you
Yeah.
kind of sort this out, especially as an expat.
Yes.
And they do an excellent job. So I see them, they're coming on, and they will give a lot of great advice on how
Okay.
to move forward.
That's Holborn Assets at 7:30 tomorrow night for the webinar, and then the Dream Team at 9. And how lovely to chat with you yesterday. I was telling everybody earlier on, Jacqui, that we had a chat. And although I know you fairly well and we speak fairly often, there were new things I found out about your love of Portugal yesterday, which are forthcoming as some short videos on the Expats Portugal channel as well. I think it's fair to say you've been... you often use the phrase, exceeding of expectations. That's happened for you for when you're, as far as it goes to with your moving to Portugal. But you took it to a new level for me yesterday with some of the stories you were telling me. So I'm looking forward to editing those.
Yeah, and Carl, there's one story, if I could just have a few seconds.
Of course, go ahead.
That was I told you about, we're in a building. I am just a Airbnb-er looking to move to Portugal. We were so lucky with our neighbors, and I told you how everyone came together during the pandemic to help us. I mean, they were helping each other. If you were over 50, they wouldn't even want you or allow you to go to a supermarket. So it's the younger people in our building doing the food shopping for everyone. When we needed a car, you can hear my dogs, I'm sorry.
I thought there was somebody in my room. I looked around there because I thought there was somebody behind me.
Hopefully they'll be quiet.
No problem, not a problem.
And one of the other things, like I said, when our car broke down, our neighbors were like insisting we use one of their cars. I really told you that I didn't make friends, I made family. I really understood how the Portuguese went out of their way, the Portuguese population, the expats, to help us. But this is really, I think, the most extraordinary story. And I left it out because it's too... When we were going, we had bought an apartment that was being renovated. One of my neighbors asked me, she's, of course, a good friend now. She says, what are you going to be doing while your home's being renovated? We said, we'll just rent another Airbnb, because at this point we had to leave our Airbnb. She goes, oh, no, you're not. You're going to stay in my apartment for free. We said, wow. We're not going to do that for 3 months. We will pay you. She goes, that's not my business. I am going to Hong Kong. I'm visiting my mother. And she's like, and I already hired a cleaning lady that I paid up front. So it comes with a cleaning lady. I was like, we're paying a cleaning person. She refused to take our money. So for 3 months, we had a place to live while our home was being renovated, and no money was exchanged. It was extraordinary how generous people were with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, you didn't share that with me yesterday.
It was almost overwhelming how incredible. And I don't even think people could believe it, because I lived in this building where people were overwhelmingly kind and generous.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. I was really
lucky. The theory or the conclusion I came to yesterday when we were talking was about how you find out about people when they're under pressure. And when Portuguese people were under the pressure of the pandemic lockdown situation, you got to see some pretty amazing people and some pretty amazing characteristics, traits, and
the best.
How people are the best. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, quite amazing.
The best. So I feel incredibly. There's never a day, and like I said, the government gave us all free health care, even though we weren't here legally. In fact, we had overstayed our visa because the embassy had closed in the States. Yeah. So there were a lot of issues, and we were eligible for free health care at that point.
Wow, amazing. So, all right, well, more about that to come. I'll be editing our conversation into some nice bite-sized chunks, which will be available on the Expats Portugal YouTube channel. Sorry, I was slightly distracted here because I've got a really long message coming in from Divineful, which I don't completely understand. And it would be great if you maybe just gave us something we could understand rather than just a load of letters.
What is this?
That's kind of weird. And also 3 for the road. I forgot to acknowledge you earlier on. So 3 for the road also in with a bon dia todos. Do we know you? Forgive me if I've forgotten that particular YouTube moniker there. So let us know. And this message, which I forgot to read out as well, which we must. Another day. I'm sure you'd agree with this, Jacqui. Another beautiful day in paradise. Bon dia. And we haven't even talked about cakes. Portuguese cake, because I know you're partial to a Portuguese cake. Have you found anything recently new to the cake lineup?
No, I'm still very much about Pao de Dios, as you know.
Yeah, I
Um,
had one the other day and I thought of you. It's just kind of
well,
coconutty, isn't it? And there's quite a lot of it as well.
well, if you get a Panderia Portuguesa, that's where I believe they make the best um,
Oh, I love
Pao
padaria
de Dios.
Portuguese. I haven't been in one of those for ages.
Yeah, and for some reason, I think they make unequivocally the best Pao de Dios. I've had it in
Okay.
a lot of places, but that's the best.
And a pretty good salad in there as well. Yes, I forgot all about that chain, which I think you find mainly around the Lisbon area. That's amazing.
It's a
Well,
great chain.
before you go, join me in saying hi to Divineful then, who's taken up quite a lot of our comments. Not that there's any limit on those. From Texas and watching. Yeah, morning to you, Divineful. Thank you for joining us. And Sarah Yeoman's here as well. So thanks, Jacqui. Have a super day in Kashkash, and I'll see you tomorrow evening.
All right, bye.
All right, ciao, ciao. There she goes. Off for a Pau de Deus in the Cascais area. Let's say hi to João de Norte. The doc's joining us in just a moment as well. The other comment that was coming in that I thought was very funny was about how Captain Crunch is very good for the word that was used here is emaciating one's gums. I think we get the idea. Well, when you're a kid, you find, don't you, if you eat too much of some cereals, they take the roof of your mouth off and lacerate. Maybe that's the word, lacerate your gums as well, like pear drops used to do. João de Norte also saying accomplishments on the one thing per day checklist. Yes, I was just talking about that, João de Norte. Your incredible approach to Portuguese life, one thing a day and a sleep in the afternoon. Yes, 2 things yesterday. Well done. Little Miss Kitty had her operation and I took my first watercolor class. Workshop class and really enjoyed it. And the work was great. I saw your work last night, of course, John, and it was really, really good. You have a great teacher there. Amazing. If you want to do watercolor up there in Pontelima, John has a great teacher and came home with some really good work. I thought it was excellent, João de Norte. Keep it somewhere special. So when you become really rich and famous as an artist, you can sell that early study, your first put together and created in Pontelima. Emaciate was an incorrect word. I couldn't think of a word that means scrapes the hell out of, but we got the gist of that. Eviscerate, lacerate, chafe maybe as well. And Jacqui asking the question, will the upcoming election in Portugal affect people moving into the country? Who better to answer that question than this gentleman? The Doc in Leiria, everybody. How you doing?
Hola, bom dia.
Hola, bom dia.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. You?
Yeah, pretty good. Well, it was a little bit of a shock earlier on this morning, Doc. Kellogg's are up to their old tricks. Now, as a doctor, you'll be familiar, I think, with fellow Dr. Kellogg and his contribution to nutrition, and I shall use the term loosely. But they're suggesting in the United States that people have cereal for dinner. What do you think of such an idea?
I think it's we've seen this phenomenon in the UK where people have forgotten how to cook or can't be bothered to go to the shop, and instead of eating properly, they just eat cereal. The idea of eating cereal for dinner is just a joke. I mean, I've always been against too many carbs anyway.
Yeah.
And this is just an attempt by Kellogg's to capture an even greater percentage share of the grocery market, the nutrition market.
Yeah,
it should be ignored.
up to their old tricks, you might say, because I think as much as I like cornflakes, and we like many things, don't we, that we get kind of indoctrinated by, I guess would be one word. I mean, you know, they're a very powerful corporation, and they taught us basically how to eat the corn kernels that were no good anywhere else in the food chain. They pressed them flat and roasted them, didn't they? And they thought, well, these are pretty tasteless, so let's cover them in milk and sugar, and we'll get a whole generation eating these, and then their children will eat it, and then their children's children, and still we have cornflakes, don't we? That are really.
I mean, the traditional British breakfast, despite my vegetarianism, but the traditional British breakfast of 1 or 2 pieces of meat, a piece of fried bread, and some fried tomato, and maybe a mushroom or 2, was a much more rounded and nutritional breakfast than a bowl of flattened roasted corn kernels covered with milk and sugar.
Quite.
It just ridiculous. What they did to the nation's diet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like you stood against that flow of propaganda back in the day when you were giving people advice on what to eat. And this next question, and let's move on from Dr. Kellogg, because he was a funny bugger, let's face it. Will the upcoming election in Portugal affect people moving into the country? So we'll come back to that, but let's pull back a bit and let people know that, of course, there is a general election here in Portugal on Sunday. It's a Sunday the 10th of March. How's it looking from your point of view, Doc?
Well, worrying in many respects. I mean, it's no secret to most regular viewers of this program that I'm somewhat on the left,
leaning to the left
of Karl Marx, and looking at the polling, the rise of Chega is worrying. Very worrying, as is the rise of the right across Europe generally. Although there does start to seem, in those countries that have led this rise of the right, there does seem to be some kickback against them, thankfully, in certain sectors.
From the left, who's kicking back?
Well, I won't say from the organised left, but from certain communities and sometimes certain sectors of the economy, defending in Scandinavia, for example, defending the trade union rights and collective bargaining against Musk and others, and we've also seeing a leveling off in the polls. I mean, Chega peaked at 21% earlier this month and last month, but they now seem to be falling off at around 17%. So that's hopeful. But the idea that a country within living memory was subject to an authoritarian and most would say fascist regime would even consider being in a position where, I mean, it's not going to happen. But Ventura says, we're going to win the election, and the idea that he'd even be in a position where people might consider that to be vaguely near reality is incredible. The Socialist Party sort of plateauing at between 26 and 30%. It looks very much like a hung result, and what comes out of the horse trading afterwards is who knows, and it won't be good for the economy whatever happens, because the uncertainty that brings won't be good, and the possibility of another early general election called by whichever.
Oh, do you think so?
Party.
Do you think that's how it could go? So there'll be a stagnation caused?
Well, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much a possibility, I think. I think what's more interesting is some of the news coming out of, and I would say this about the far left. So we've got Mariana Mortágua stating categorically that Portugal cannot be the mecca of low wages for multinationals.
Yes.
I mean, this was from yesterday, and she's saying that Portugal can't effectively become the new developing country where every multinational can offshore its work to, because the hourly wages are so low. It's really important that does not happen for a number of reasons. One of which, of course, is the emigration that results, and that's a huge problem at the moment for Portugal. The numbers of young people who realise that while Portugal is a wonderful place to live and to retire to, it's not the place to be earning your income or your pension. And so people go to France or America or, God forbid, Britain.
We need good young people in Britain.
Suffer the deprivations of living in those countries in order to earn enough to be able to buy a property here or retire here. But the idea that Portugal becomes this low, or continues to be a low wage economy, must stop, and we need to be able to sort that out. The other thing, of course, is what happens in two sectors of the economy: the housing sector, which I'm sure Bobby will have a lot to say about later. And
mate, well, let me tell you, he can't join us today. This is what his office looks like today. So he's not.
Right, okay. It looks rather more organised than mine. And
definitely a paperclip here somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so the More Homes initiative is not well, should we say it's not turning out to be producing lots more homes for the people who need them. With 1.2 million people below the poverty line, I see this morning being reported by Caritas.
Really?
And people not being able to afford a home for rent, let alone to buy. So the housing sector is in a desperate situation. And of course, the other thing is the agricultural sector, because Portugal, for all its modernisation, its industry, remains very much an agricultural-based economy. And while farming and urban communities aren't traditionally bedrock for the left, they have been in certain areas in Portugal, because they realise that things have to change, and we can't approach agriculture in the same way we've approached every other sector of the economy, with some kind of neoliberal economic arguments. So we need a new deal for the agricultural sector. Otherwise, it's not just tractors blocking the streets that are going to be a problem. It's going to be an increasing, even more increasing price of food, and an increasing scarcity of food.
Yeah, not looking good, and a paucity of political solutions, one might say. It seems to me that nobody's doing this especially well. And with the way that Portugal's politics work, you may well be right that we may be in a situation where there's horse trading. You know, the lineup in the parliament will not be agreeable, or people will not be prepared to sacrifice political power to make for the greater good of the country. That seems to be what happens in these situations. I mean, they're in politics after all, aren't they? They are career politicians, so why would they sacrifice themselves for the sake of the country? Which might prompt either another election as a kind of laxative to ease that situation, or just more of the same. I mean, that's pretty much the prognosis I've heard from a lot of Portuguese people. Almost like it doesn't make any difference. We're going to get this stagnation, centrist stagnation. And in a way, you might think, well, that's quite a good thing, because that means at least career politicians don't get a lot of power, which when we see them getting a lot of power, it doesn't always bring back the best results. So maybe let's just keep them busy arguing with themselves, and we'll organise things for ourselves, thank you very much, on the streets and farms of Portugal.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm all for grassroots organisation, because if there's one thing that can get rid of career politicians, it's grassroots organisation. But or the promise of getting rid of career politicians. But centrist governments tend to promote careerist politicians, because you either become a successful politician by learning the game and working out how to become a career politician and defending your position, or you become a successful politician by actually capturing the imagination of the people with radical new ideas. And so while centrism might be comfortable and people might see, well, we can let the careerists get on with it and we'll organise for ourselves, while they're organising for themselves, the careerists are wrecking the economy and actually not providing the macro solutions that are necessary, because grassroots organisation, without grasping the macro levers of power, still is very limited in what it can achieve.
Mm. Yeah, and the other problem, of course, is if you do if a country becomes very excited about electing a radical, depending on your flavour of politics, that can also be quite disastrous as well, can't it? As we see, I mean, I can't think of a single situation in recent history where that latter scenario you talk about, where a population has had its imagination captured by a radically thinking and different thinking politician. That bit happens, but then when they come to power, they don't tend to follow through on what they promised. Tony Blair's a really good example in the UK, isn't he? For example,
Tony Blair was a disaster. He was a liar, but he's much like Starmer. Starmer follows in his mould. Promised lots on the left and then swerved to the right. I mean, Starmer's done it even before he's got power. He mistook gaining power in the Labour Party with a promise of gaining power in the country. Luckily or unluckily, luckily for him, that's turned out to be correct, but it didn't have to. And it's only through the incompetence and negligence of the current government in the UK that means that, yes, he will end up there. But
let's not get too fixated on the UK. And there's
no,
a point
indeed, no. But I mean, no, sorry, but it's just the example I know best to be able to turn to in recent history.
Yeah,
but you can look at Trump. Trump captured the imagination of the American people and was a nightmare for America and for the rest of the world. Sanders nearly captured the imagination sufficiently to gain power, but didn't. Corbyn nearly captured the imagination sufficiently, but didn't. In Portugal, the far left, who have made gains in the past and enough gains to be in government previously, unfortunately weren't able to continue that momentum. Ventura looks as if he's gained some momentum. Hopefully will not gain any more, because that would be a nightmare for the...
Let's come back to him and look at why that might be the case. Speak up, Paul Richards. Order, gentlemen. Please answer the original question. How will it affect
yeah, okay.
in Portugal? So,
yeah, sure. Okay.
Before you go there, Doc, I've got a very good resource. Now, this was shared with us by Tom over on the Portugal Club. Put this on our timeline here. It is in Portuguese. The link is in the chat, and you can click on which party. I mean, it's a good start. And of course, politics, hopefully, ideally, isn't reduced to 5 bullet points for each party. But you've got to start somewhere, haven't you? And if you are a novice in Portuguese politics, this might be quite useful to you with your Google Translate turned on to see what the 5 bullet points of each party are. And as you can see there, that's why it's quite a sort of rich and complicated picture here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players, are there not? That might make up the lineup, the political lineup here in Portugal. And that's the link that's in the chat at the moment about that, if you want to find out more. That's very helpful, Tom S. Thank you very much for that. There's the link. So let's go back to that question. What do you think will happen for foreigners trying to come into Portugal then?
Well, I mean, there's already been big change without there being a change in government. So the big recent changes are the NHR and the golden visa.
Yeah.
The NHR having been abolished and the golden visa having been severely restricted. So there are going to be no big changes there in terms of housing costs. If you're coming to Portugal, I think the domestic housing market will be less important than the exchange rate, to be honest, because at the moment Europe is perhaps teetering on the brink of a recession. It depends what happens in the next quarter or two in Germany, and the Portuguese economy is not big enough to significantly alter the exchange rate of the euro, because the Portuguese economy is based on 12 million people, maybe 4 or 5 million of working age, against a massively larger European economically active population. So the Portuguese government can't sway the exchange rate, which I suspect is the biggest influence when you're bringing money in, either as capital or income. So that's not going to make a big difference. Tax policy, we already have reasonably high rates of tax, so I can't see big changes to the upside in Portugal. There might be some tinkering with how tax is applied, but having got rid of the golden visa and the NHR, or most of the golden visa and the NHR, I don't think Portugal is going to make any moves to the upside for expats to further put off the immigration of wealthy individuals, and I include those with what would be moderate incomes elsewhere or moderate capital elsewhere. But they're not going to want to put they're not going to want to disincentivize further the bringing of money into the country. So I don't see that making
or
big
labour
change.
for that matter, right? Because that's an important part of migration into Portugal is the labour market, not just the movement of money into the country.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to know what your motivation is, Paul, for asking the question. I suspect, it's to do with, will it be more difficult? Is it going to be more difficult for people to move to Portugal? Will the bureaucratic processes tighten up? I can't see that happening any more than we've seen in recent times. And in many ways, IMA's reorganization, I heard some quite encouraging things. IMA are trying to deal with the massive pile of admin that they have on their desks of, 300,000+ applications. It's a lot of work that they're meant to be doing, and I think they are trying to do something with it. And the kind of deep state of Portugal, the bureaucratic state, the Mandarin class, is that what they're called, Doc?
Yeah,
that's another thing, isn't it? They kind of the things that get put in place, like the golden visa and the NHR, they're really old political tools. It's not like they came in recently and then got fired recently. They're really old, and they were always going to go anyway. They were never meant to be long-term things. They were a quick fix, weren't they, to attract some
well,
wealth.
the NHR was under criticism from Europe almost from its inception, because they really saw it as tax avoidance by the back door. The golden visa, there are a number of other similar visa schemes across Europe. The restriction of it in Portugal was really about pandering to a certain section of the population and including it in the housing program. It won't really have much an effect.
I agree.
That's
Right,
what it is.
We've got great questions and comments coming in, and we will get to all of these. Bear with us. We like to have a leisurely conversation. We're not one of those TV shows or live streams.
We're not a rapid fire thing.
Bang, bang, boom, boom. No, we like to consider things, and we're very interested to hear what you're thinking about these things as well. For those of you who are watching this morning, and
health is a big issue. So there have been. I'm always persuading people what ideas would be considered radical, interesting. So in terms of health, I'm always persuading people to rely on the health service. And one of the reasons that people give for immigrating to Portugal, particularly from the US, is the huge cost of healthcare in the US, even if you've got insurance, and the fact that copay can bankrupt you if you end up even insured if you end up with a serious diagnosis. And so I understand when people, particularly from the States, say, oh, I'm quite happy to pay an insurance premium, which is 10% of what I paid in the US, and the copay is so small and the cover is so much better. And I've always said, but yes, you don't even need it because the SNS is fantastic. However, there are areas where the SNS is not fantastic. And I think if we don't see an improvement in spending on the SNS and measures taken to retain doctors and nurses in Portugal, that we train in Portugal, then if the pressures on the SNS get worse, I think it'll be more important for people to maintain private insurance from an individual perspective within Portugal, although arguably the effect of private insurance exacerbates the problems in the SNS and does not actually alleviate them.
As does low pay for the workers, right? But we'll come back to that. We'll come back to how that works, or how it could work, because not many people. It needs you and me on this, because not many people have cracked it yet, Doc. Right. So let's go to our questions from our community then. What ideas would be considered radical? And Paul Richards, did we answer the question to your satisfaction? What were you asking behind your question there about will it affect migration? Like, will the processes be more difficult? Will things in the world? I mean, the bigger issue is geopolitics and what's going on in the rest of the world outside of Portugal, causing people to want to come to Portugal, right? But anyway, you tell me what you were asking behind the question there. What ideas would be considered radical? What's radical to you, Doc? And I ask that of everyone else watching as well.
Well, it's not particularly radical to me, but these are things I would like to see which most would consider radical. So I would want a nationalisation of the utilities.
Yeah.
Water, telecoms, electricity and gas, with and also of the toll roads, in order to drive down the costs of basic infrastructure. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, I think, actually to me would be, and this might seem counterintuitive after what I was just saying, but I would seriously restrict the provision of private healthcare in order to drive back into the SNS the labour that has been sucked out of the SNS by the higher paying and better working conditions in the private sector. And that would need a quid pro quo in terms of pay and working conditions. But actually, the pay in the SNS needs to increase anyway, so that would help offset that. And the working conditions in the SNS can only improve by the sudden influx of well-trained Portuguese workers. But we would also have to make sure we were paying enough to stop people just leaving the country.
Yeah. And it's also radical in the sense that you would enforce that rather than let the market decide. This would be a government deciding to do these things. Okay, of course. So there you go, Sarah. What do you think would be radical in government? Why is this? This is a good back to basics question, really, because this can happen. We can have bogeyman politics, can't we? And you, of course, you face this in your own way, don't you? Like the left bloc, bloody communists, people freaking out, and just projecting their ideas onto you, Doc, which may well be different in reality to what people perceive and have prejudices about. How does that work for Chega? Why are they labelled as far right or radical, do you think?
Okay, because Chega uses populist motifs and far-right motifs in order to boost his this is Ventura, boost his popularity in certain sectors. So he made outlandish anti-gypsy claims, traveller claims. Was it last year or the year before in terms of crime and whatever it was? Anyway, they're anti-immigration. Generally, anti-workers' rights, so they decrease job protection and job security in an economy which has already got a high level of precarious work. He would make that worse, and those are policies that he's espoused. And they are far right-wing policies.
But do you think that's helpful? Because those things that you've said, if they're true, are available for discussion and rebuttal and challenge, aren't they? I mean, do you like being called a far left political?
Yeah, I'm proud of it.
You don't have a problem with that? Okay, well,
no, because people understand generally what is meant by far left, and if they don't, they can ask, as indeed Joao has asked what is meant by far right or radical. You know, if someone asked me what being a far left politically means, it means that the necessities of life and comfort are provided on a social basis, so everyone clubs together and shares out that cost, and that's what a proper tax system and a proper welfare state and proper workers' rights and protections do. Mm-hmm. Whereas the alternative is giving everybody equality of opportunity, but equality of opportunity does not result in equality of performance. And we all need each other. Yeah, it's not good enough to say, well, you all run on the same racetrack, but only one person gets anything at the end of it.
Okay, fair enough. No, well, I'm glad you decoded that. I think it's lazy, just to sure. reject people on this, on the basis of like I said.
Yeah, but we only have half an hour, Carl. So no, that's why people. And I'm not criticising. I'm just saying, it's used when people are either short of time or short of page space in an article. Yeah, they use 2 or 3 words to sum up. But you're right, we have to increase people's engagement with political discussion so people know what we mean by these things.
And thank you for your explanation of far left. That when you put it like that, it's like, well, that sounds like a good idea, or it doesn't. You're talking about the idea, aren't you, rather than just a blanket term, or even a put down. We live in the age of using these slogans as put downs, really, don't we, or to reject things rather than discuss them. So thank you for that, Antonio. To Paul, nobody knows because there's not an election winner, and that's the interesting thing, isn't it? There isn't really a winner, is there, in this? There will be a coagulation rather than a result.
Well, there's certainly not going to be anyone with an outright majority. And yes, even without the winner, then even when we have the winner or winners, we still have to find out what they're going to agree between themselves before we know what policies come out of that as government policies. And then I think we'll end up with a very early, within 2 years, there'll be another election, I think.
Okay, well, it's getting super interesting here. Doc suggestions sound practically Stalinist.
That's interesting. So Stalinist is a put down. Now, it's not Stalinist. It is communist. Stalinism was a way of repressing people who were opposed to the particular way Stalin used his power. Yeah. And actually, he was very much against the sort of progressive ideas that first formed the ideas of the Russian Revolution 100 years ago. Stalin was faced with a situation where there was economic blockade by the capitalist powers, and he couldn't proceed with a proper socialist economy. So I'm not defending him. What he did was appalling. But Stalinism has nothing to do with economic communism and everything to do with political repression.
Thank you, Joel.
And I am absolutely against political repression, I can assure you.
Thank you very much, Doc, and thank you for your continued contributions in the chat. It's getting interesting, and now it's going to get even more interesting because we're going to bring on Senor Fornassi from Italia onto the screen. Let's give him a nice big round of applause. Hola, buen dia, tudo bem?
Buen dia, buongiorno a tutti.
Buongiorno a tutti. Right, it's very fascinating to have you here, Paolo, because I think you have a little bit of a political background from Italy, from where you come. Do you know about Paolo's work in the Algarve, Andy?
No.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so for you and for anyone else who doesn't, Paolo is the one of the people who's part of the team of this amazing group of foreigners, estrangeros, foreigners originally in Albufeira, where there is around 50% of the population of foreigners, and then when you got together with people and you suggested this idea, Paolo, it became so popular that you've extended that to all of the Algarve, and you are is it right to describe you as a representative body for the rights of foreigners, formerly in the Albufeira area, but all across Algarve now?
Oh, we found the group because we see in Albufeira, but in all Algarve, the oil and the water don't mix between them. Yes, because I see the Ukrainian community, for example, when they start the war, they asked me help to organize the manifestation in front of the council, an example. And I see only the Ukrainian. When I see to the charity party with a shelter, I see only British. When I go to the council party, I see only Portuguese. So I think we have a problem. We have a problem to join all the communities between them. Yeah. So I am Italian. So I am a neutral because Italian have not rivalry with because an example I see many countries in South America, many countries in Africa, many countries have a rivalry between them. An example, yes. Italy is more neutral. An example, so no, but it's true.
I never thought of that before, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, you are the there's a neutrality and a lack of rivalry. Yes.
An example, French, England, an example, have a little rivalry. Yes. Italy is a point of intermedium between many cultures. You see an example, many Brazilian marry with Italian, Italian with Ukrainian. It is an example. We have Italian have many good relationships between many countries.
Of course, the Roman civilization to call upon as well.
Yeah, maybe Italy, yes. and Italian is more expansive. Is more the characters of Italian is to talk, is to sympathy, to love many, and there's for this reason, like Spain too. For this reason, we have it's more simple to me to make friends.
Yeah, you've been doing that, and it's fair to say it's gone really well, hasn't it? I mean, it probably surpassed your expectations when you first started talking about this. It's because Albufeira is fascinating, 50% foreigner or thereabouts, and with this incredible mix of people, which is, of course, what we see in Portugal. There are lots of different nationalities.
90 nationalities different.
90 in Albufeira. That's incredible, isn't it? And you're doing your best to bring them together. How is that going?
No, it's going even better. In the first month, is not simple because the many Portuguese people don't understand the message, and I have received many insults, many offense against me because they don't understand what I found what I want. But right now is going better. We have received support of many communities and support right now to the newspaper in Algarve to bring us two page only two page exclusivity for us to write about foreigners. Is in Portuguese. In Portuguese, it's just a little revolution for here in Algarve. We have here other newspaper in English, Portugal Resident, Portugal News, but in for Portuguese newspaper is a little revolutionary. So coming better, we have reached 3,500. So it's growing every week. Every week. So and we have expanded the group for all the Algarve because Albufeira have this particularity, but it's not only Albufeira. Vila do Bispo, Sagres, Portimao have thousand hundred and thousand of foreigners or expats living in Algarve. Albufeira is just one case, but the other city have the same and the same percentage because Vila do Bispo it have more percentage of expats than Albufeira, for example. So and it's across the country because you go to Odemira, you read in the newspaper. Odemira is in Alentejo, not in Algarve. Have another growing percentage of immigrants. So in Algarve, you have foreigner or expat, you have immigrants who came to Algarve to search the work, but many retired people. In Alentejo, you see only not only but just the 90% to immigrants to go to ask to work. To go to work, not retire. In Algarve is little different. We have many thousand of retire from England, Italy. Is an immigrant is different immigration than in Alentejo.
So true. We are a very diverse community, and there are all sorts of issues across the whole foreign population. Can I want to find out about what you think is going to go on with the election and how that will affect what you're talking about and migration, immigration, foreigners being in Portugal generally, Paolo.
Yes.
Sorry, no,
yesterday.
Go ahead. I mean, what I wanted to, before we do that, I wanted to ask you about some of the pushback or criticism you've been getting from Portuguese people, some Portuguese people, that I have to say, not you had a little bit of heat, and I think that's based on a possibly a misunderstanding and an emotional reaction to what you're suggesting and talking about, and maybe some prejudices going on. How would you explain it?
No, well, the problem is, I think we are near of election, national election, and we see yesterday all the parties, all to talk about immigration, all, because ex Prime Minister Passos Coelho talk about immigration and associate the immigration with the not secure country. They say he say the feeling of the people if more immigration is more unsafe society in Portugal. All the parties respond in favor or against this idea of foreign ex Prime Minister Passos Coelho. And we see the rising in Portugal of the themes about anti-immigration feeling. Because it's a political issue. In Italy, it's the same. In France, it's the same. In England, the Brexit. I think the Brexit is a reaction, overreaction of the society against immigrants.
Yep.
So in Portugal, it has not this level, but is a political. We Chega, the right party, talk about the immigrants and see he start to talk against not immigrants, all immigrants, against part of immigrants and many concentration of immigrants in parts of the Lisbon or in parts of Portugal. And so the people you see, the people have the Portuguese people have many difficulties to arrive at the end of the month with money. You see the inflation is growing, so have difficulties, and so the result of that is okay. My situation become worse because it's a fault of Portugal politics. Because they give all to the foreigners, not to me, Portuguese. I work, I pay taxes, and I see my neighbor is a foreigner and he don't work. He have this. He have is a political instrumental talk. About,
this is not new, is it? This is not new in any country in the world.
Yes, but in Portugal is new.
Okay, interesting.
In Portugal is new because Chega, but it's not the fault of Chega, but Chega see the feeling, hear the feeling of the many Portuguese and start to talk about this. And we have in the last 4 years change in political immigrants in law in Portugal. You see, is more the government have give many facility to immigrants to come to Portugal. You see, yes, I think in all Europe, Portugal is the most simple to immigrants came and stay with legal papers. Because you go to England is very difficult to arrive and start to work like a foreigners. In Portugal is more simple. So many people came from, particularly from Asia, came from Portugal, and this make the intolerance in Portugal grow, because Portugal see Ukrainian, see British, Italian or Brazilian like similar. But when the Portuguese have scared about many Asian because they don't know about them. And so the immigrants, you see, you in south border in USA, the people have a scare because they don't know about these people. The humanity have a scare about the unknown.
Yes, absolutely. Fear of the unknown, for sure. Now, and you're addressing this head on, aren't you? I mean, I think Doc Paolo's articulated that very well. What remains is what we do about that, right? Because it is a problem. Let's face it; it is a challenge to this culture, and the last thing we want to have happen is an irritation or a resentment from the population who have been so kind and welcoming and hospitable to us. And you're doing that, aren't you, Paolo?
But an example. I propose. I see 10% of population Albufeira came from Asia.
Did it?
10%.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But I see Asia, but it's India, Pakistan, Nepal, Afghanistan. Okay.
Bangladesh.
10%. So I see. Oh, okay. They are here. So take easy and help these people to integrate better in Albufeira. So I ask an example, a simple things, you know, the cricket field and all the communities, Portuguese community, not with my taxes. I don't pay a cricket field for you. I don't pay the cricket field for foreigners. But cricket field, you know, we to make a field of cricket, you make a 500 euro, 1,000 euro. You have your cricket, your cricket. But nobody say nothing because when the Portugal's municipal council spend more than 100,000 to change the field of football. Change with the grass. Put the grass in the field. Change the grass in the superficie of the field of football. Spend more than 100,000 euro. Nobody say nothing. But for 500 to make a cricket field, not with my taxes, no pay you.
Doc's got that down the back of his sofa. It could be the Thompson cricket ground in the Algarve. How about that, Andy? What do you think, Doc, of what you've heard so far from Paolo? He's quite the gentleman, isn't he?
Yeah, no, I think what Paolo's doing is fantastic, and as I've said before, I think grassroots action on its own cannot change the country permanently or quickly, but grassroots action on its own is absolutely vital. Sorry, not on its own. Grassroots action is absolutely vital to build solidarity between communities and to empower communities to take control of their own lives. So what you're doing is fantastic, and I agree with you 100%. And you're right that Chega has employed a populist response to the concerns, many of which are understandable. The concerns about immigration, its effect on housing, and the availability of services, and it's up to the rest of us to be able to counter those arguments where they're wrong and to propose solutions where there are real issues. And what you're doing it's brilliant.
Yeah, long may it continue, Paolo. So people can find you on Facebook, the Estrangeros Foreigners Group. How do we get that cricket field built? Because I thought that was a great idea. Why, the people who are employing these young fellas who want to play cricket, can't the employers also put in? Someone suggested that to me. Well, why doesn't the company that employ the young men who want to play cricket contribute towards the cricket field as well? That's a good idea, isn't it?
No. Sorry. I mean, I would, some would say correctly that those employers already pay tax.
Yeah.
And that the people who are working and the people who are spending already pay tax. They pay EVA. They pay IRS.
Yes.
The employers pay their taxes. This isn't about, and I'm not saying that the tax take is sufficient, but I said before it probably can't be increased easily at the moment, the economic circumstances as they are. But the important thing is the fair application of those taxes. Yes. Why should it be okay to replace the turf on the football pitch for 100,000 euros and not to be okay to spend 1,000 euros on a cricket pitch if more than 1% of the population want to play cricket as opposed to football? So it's about representation and the application of the taxes that are already paid, but it's also about providing for communities. People will integrate if they feel at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they won't integrate if they're made to feel excluded.
Well, it won't help, that's for sure. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. You guys all right till about 10 o'clock? We've got other questions coming in. One early question that was asked about, this was before you joined us, Paolo, but how AI might change things. I mean, we're concerned about the general election that's coming up, but there are some big factors in the world in which we sit, okay? We're talking about the Portuguese general election, but let's face it, a lot of geopolitical influences, forces are at work around the rest of the world, which you could argue will have a far greater effect on what goes on in Portugal than its own choice of government. AI being one of them. What do you think, just briefly, Doc, is going to happen? You must have been keeping an eye on this. How will that affect the economy of Portugal?
In the short term, I think AI is going to bring money into Portugal only because a lot of the tech companies already have a disproportionate presence here, and also because the young people generally are more IT proficient than they are certainly in the UK. It's the only example I can compare. So in the short term, I think AI will help the Portuguese economy, but in the long term, I worry about AI being in the hands of neoliberal capitalism, as opposed to being the benefits of AI being reaped by the people as a whole.
Yep.
You know, it's the same. What happened with IT? You know, we had this massive explosion of IT and robotic manufacture, and the only people who benefited were those at the top who owned the IT, rather than the workers, who should have seen a reduction in their working week with no loss of income.
There's a bit of a pattern forming here. What do you think, Paolo? Do you have a view on AI?
About the election and the economic future of Portugal?
No, more specifically about artificial intelligence. I mean, is that on the radar in the Algarve, for example?
Because I think the AI have help can help the region. Is possible. Okay, I am in favor, but I think the political movement in political government in Algarve of the region have not prepared yet to this change. They have because you need a political government that accept the EA. Not with and I don't see this in Algarve. I don't see because the political is the same politics than 20 years.
Yeah.
So to change the vision with the same politics, I don't think doesn't work here in Algarve right now. And the only possibility for me is to include the expats that have another vision from other countries, and to integrate and to ask to the expat, so have a EA work in your country. No idea, an example. But if you have the politics that stay here, the same politics from 20 years to now, I don't see the change with this government. Government, national government. Council government, municipal government here in Algarve.
Very interesting angle on that. Thank you so much for being here. We can't discuss all of these, but I want to make sure they're included. Do you think that modernising the inheritance rules would help the housing issues? That's interesting. Hey, went to a Miguel Araujo concert last night. Go to one if you can. They did super titles, not subtitles, projected lyrics above the stage to assist in the inevitable sing-along. Improve your Portuguese by going along to a Miguel Araujo concert. It's a double-edged sword, says Ocean Dweller, who's in Porto with this beautiful photograph in Porto. On the one hand, the country needed to increase investment and revenue. On the other hand, these policies have disadvantaged many local Portuguese people, you say there. And Sarah Taylor looked up populism. According to a quick search, a person, especially a politician, who strives to appeal to ordinary people who feel that their concerns are disregarded by established elite groups. Well, that would include Paolo and maybe all of us here. I think we can be united in the fact that we're populists on the basis that we would like to see an easing off the levers of power from the established elite groups and more in the hands of people.
The danger is that populist politicians appeal to those sectors without actually providing the answers. They just use that populism to gain control.
For personal gain. Wow. I'm going to take that as the last word. Let's give Paolo a last word now because we've got to go. Go ahead, Paolo.
I only tell my English is very worse.
Oh, you're amazing, Paolo.
It's not good. I explain you why, because in Italy the problem we have about the English. But I speak perfect Portuguese and write and read, no problem in Portuguese. But I tell one suggestion: the integration of foreign communities, in particular British community, is to learn Portuguese. Is the way to integrate more in Portugal. I see many British have living in Portugal from 20 years and don't speak Portuguese. It's a problem for integration. Is a problem for all the communities here and the people too. And this is a symptom of a problem, because you go to a country, you don't speak the language, is a problem. Because the problem, you don't make friends outside your communities. Is just a suggestion. For that, I will ask the support to the municipal council to free lesson of Portuguese for expats, because maybe you can pay a lesson, but many people have not possibility to pay a lesson of Portuguese. So the first way to integration is the language. Imagine all of us go to England and don't speak English.
It doesn't go down well. Okay, well, yeah, well said. Great last word there. Excellent to have you on. We must have you on more often, Paolo. The Doc, we'll see you next month. Gentlemen, have an excellent day. Take care, everybody. See you.
Ciao.
Bye for now. See you in a week. Ciao. Well done, everybody.